The second point he's going to make, he says, because he repeats the quote, I have the right to do anything. And he says, but I will be mastered by anything. Or I will not be mastered by anything. So the first objection is the fruitfulness of it. His second objection is the mastery of it, which is a little bit odd, isn't it? We may not necessarily think that about fornication. We might think that about alcoholism, drug abuse, maybe entertainment addiction. There's a lot of things that we might think about addiction-wise, being mastered by, being addicted to, given over to. But we may not associate that with sex. You know, one of the interesting things is that I'm not sure what your Bible translation says, but over and over again, you see, like in verse 18, sexual immorality. We mentioned this last week. The word sexual immorality is porneia in Greek, which might sound familiar, right? Porneia. And so what porneia is, it's the Greek word for any kind of sexual immorality at all. It's not a line, it's not a certain thing. It's the idea of being involved in something that is not for you to be involved in that's sexual. It includes writing, it includes pictures, it includes, well, they don't have movies, but for our intents and purposes, it includes movies or videos, things like that. It includes the actual act of sex. It includes the places we go, without intercourse, everything except intercourse. That kind of mentality. I'm not making a rule for what you should do in your relationship. Just as a side note, as we kind of get deeper into some of these ideas that affect us in fornication, making each other inflamed sexually but not having intercourse is not godly. Be careful in your relationships before you're married, because inflaming someone, getting them all riled up sexually, or yourself, and then trying to just pull the eject cord is obviously oftentimes not effectual, and it doesn't help things. We'll move on, though. The second is, I will not be mastered. So this is one of my favorite stats. I throw it out a lot. You can check it out for yourself. It's fightthenewdrug.org. It's a secular website. It's fightthenewdrug.org. And what they do is they basically keep tabs on the destructiveness of pornography. Pornography is a very bizarre thing, right? Because it's so accepted in our culture, isn't it? And it's accepted by a lot of people. I think all of us would say, let's not objectify women, right? We don't want to make women into objects. We don't want to make men into objects, but I think it happens probably more men objectifying women. And so pornography is like the pinnacle of turning a woman into an object, right? But yet our society that claims feminism and all these things will not condone it or not condemn it. It's the most wild thing in the world to me. There is not very much as destructive in our world as pornography. You go, well, that's kind of, no, do some research. So 67% of men in the church and out of the church, Barna's confirmed that, Barna Research Group, 67% of men in the church and out of the church regularly look at pornography. It's 2 out of 3. What's maybe more shocking, 47% of women, or 37% of women, 37% of women regularly look at pornography in the church and out of the church. The numbers are no different. But here's where it gets really scary. 70% of both of those groups, men and women, so 70% of the 67% that admit to regularly looking at pornography, that's regularly. 70% of both categories have said they've tried to stop and they can't. So just tuck that away. 70% of people that are trying to stop looking at pornography on a regular basis find themselves unable to do it. And we can do blame and shame later, but hopefully we can just avoid that, but just talk about the truth, the facts of it. So that's a radical amount of our population in the United States that are mastered by sexual sin. Then when you start looking the fallout from that, you have literally entire generations. Time Magazine has done stuff on it. This isn't like fringe tinfoil hat Christian groups, okay? This is legitimate. Everybody agrees, secular and Christian, that this is the worst stuff in the world and nobody will act on it. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. Some people are, but very few in our society. So you take those numbers and you start to consider the reality that they're of the mastery of that. Now, I am not saying that everyone who looks at pornography ends up a serial killer, all right? But the night before Ted Bundy was executed, James Dobson interviewed him. I don't know if you ever watched that. You can go on YouTube, you can watch the interview. So James Dobson interviews Ted Bundy. if you're not familiar with Ted Bundy, he did a lot of weird sexual stuff and killed a lot of women. Okay? He was a serial killer. Ted Bundy grew up in a Christian home. Ted Bundy grew up in the 70s where not everybody had a phone. Let's be real. Any of us, right this minute, can get porn right now. In the church service, doesn't matter. You pull your phone out, Insta porn, it's free, it's super available. Ted Bundy didn't have that in the 70s growing up. Ted Bundy had, you know what, he literally said he started with like JCPenney ads. They get the JCPenney ads in the mail, it's the women's underwear section, and he would just look at that and it would arouse him. He moved from that to he said that him and his brother, by accident, like basically tromping around in their neighborhood, I think it was butted up some hills or some woods, found in some trash heaps some old like porn magazines. So he started looking at those. Then when he turned 18, he was able to start procuring videos, so he started looking at those. And then it went on and went on and on, and then it got to violent pornography. This is something else that fightthenewdrug.org has kind of looked at. They estimated about 70% of pornography shows dominance over women, some sort of violence over women. And what literally, clinically, what happens to a person when they watch that, men or women, your brain, because of the sexual content, releases dopamine. You like it. Even in young kids, the average age in the United States of America for boys to see pornography is 8 years old. So when an 8-year-old boy sees pornography, what happens is the dopamine gets released and they like it. They don't know why they like it. It makes them nervous. They've done big studies on this, but they like it. It imbues in them a desire for those things because they're awakening something too early that shouldn't be awakened. All right, so back to Ted Bundy. He begins to watch these things that include violence. And so when dopamine gets released in your brain because you're observing the sexual activity, you actually, men and women, train their brains to like violence against women. You might say, you're crazy, James. No, Billie Eilish, who I've never even listened to one of her songs, but apparently she's big in music. Billie Eilish did an interview with Howard Stern. Not that I listen to Howard Stern either. I read the blurb. She did an interview with him. She said that she was exposed to porn when she was 11 years old. And she went on to say, here's, millionaire woman, does not care about Jesus, has no religious background that we know of. She begins to watch pornography. She starts getting into rape porn, which, by the way, is the biggest growing pornography genre that there is. Billie Eilish tells in her interview that she became so unhealthy that she viewed rape as the only way to be sexually gratified. A woman. It's wild how twisted and how deep sexual appetite runs. And with men, it trains men to love committing violence, to enjoy it. So with Ted Bundy, he said he reached a place, and he freely admits, he says, look, I know there's a lot of broken stuff in me. He says, I'm not blaming pornography. Ted Bundy said, I'm not blaming pornography. He's just saying it gave me and brought me to a place where I was finally willing to start acting out the violence I was watching because I felt it was the only way that I could be gratified. It's pretty wild stuff. So Paul comes down here and says, look, I will come into the mastery of none. We're not saying everybody ends up Ted Bundy. I just want to paint a picture here that sexual immorality is not based on a bunch of stuffy people that just hate fun. It's based on the reality that God built people a certain way for a certain context for sexual interaction. And when we deviate from that, it's fun for a time, but it uses and it destroys us. And that's not something we can escape.